Hi guys, welcome to FYP Plan TV for our podcast this week. As you can see, we've got a slightly different setup. We've got the guys from Sky Sports here filming the pod because obviously it's been a dramatic few days and they've been asking us a few things, filming the pod, asking us what's happening. And we've had Dickie Davies from Sky Sports down here asking us some questions. So I'm going to get his reaction to Palace and to being in the room where it happens on the podcast. All right, Dickie, welcome to the FYP Podcast studio, as it were. You sat in on the pod just now. Was it enjoyable experience for you?
Yes, very, very enjoyable. I think always when you're kind of with a group of fans who know the club inside out, it's always great to watch, and you know, to combine the humour in the middle of your sort of circumstance at the moment it was terrific.
Palace fans have to have humour, don't they?
They do, yeah. I mean, I think that the Boer thing you could kind of quickly see going wrong. The Swansea performance, the game I was at and working on, was absolutely abject, and I think you can't have many of those before there's going to be a change, and you're at that stage. You're a little bit unlucky. The Burnley game, they clearly should have won by a country mile. Really too clear off the line. Chance missed right at the end of the game, but I think the writing was, had they won it, I think the writing was already on the wall. It looked like the change was going to happen.
Why does drama seem to follow Palace around like a bad smell?
It seems like year after year. I mean, I'm countless. I'm thinking back to Tony Pulis leaving just before the start of the season, Ian Holloway not lasting very long at the start of the season, having got them promoted. It just, see, this time of the season for Palace fans, you're almost waiting for something to happen, really, aren't you?
Do you think Palace are going to be right? Do you think Roy's the right guy? Do you think he's going to save us?
I think he's a very, very good choice. I think also handy that he's around. I mean, think of Palace 4 or 5 years ago, the fact you've had two recent England managers in charge, the measure of kind of the pull of the club, really, Premier League, based in London. You would never have thought it a few years back. What Dougie Freedman started with that side that went on to come out of the Championship as, started off with a bright young manager to then go through the likes of Pulis, Allardyce, Hodgson, even De Boer. Incredible.
In a word, will Palace stay up?
Yep.
Hello and welcome to the 5-Year Plan Podcast.
Hey!
Pod 224.
Wow.
Yeah, wow indeed.
One more than last week already.
Correct. Sponsored by Vector Printing. For all your printing embroidery needs, go to vector.co.uk and it's Vector with a
Okay.
Correct. And JCIS, the global research and brand consultancy from South London. Visit jc-is.com.
I will.
Little Elvis tilt of the mic there. That was lovely. That was very nice.
Uh-huh.
It's Pod 224, and before we get into lots to talk about tonight, we mentioned our sponsored walk last week as part of the Palace for Life Foundation.
Marathon March.
Well, that makes it sound more rigorous than it's going to be.
It's going to be pretty rigorous, mate. 26
Sponsored
miles.
pub crawl.
This side of the table is going to be rigorous.
It's got 8 pubs along the route.
Yeah.
It's a sponsored pub crawl.
No, it is. And do you know what? It's been sponsored already to the tune of £1,000 by our listeners in a week.
Wow. 1,088.
All right, 1,080 and 41p if you're being...
Since
specific.
You said that, there's another £6.59
that's been taken off. So thank you very much to everyone that's donated. Of course, some of you have been entered into the prize draw, and I remind you of the prizes. £5 donation gets you entered to win potentially a free subscription to the fanzine. Ooh, indeed. 10, save those oohs. £10 gets you entered into a draw for some free FYP merch. There's going to be some t-shirts and stuff. 25 quid. 25 quid gets you entered into a draw to be a guest on the extra pod after a game. That's pretty cool. And
Which I've never been, so I might.
You have to donate, mate.
Put 25 quid in.
50 quid, and you can be on the full pod in this room.
Wow.
At this table. A few people have. I need to point out though, because I didn't research this well enough, do not tick
Amazing.
gift aid, because if you tick gift aid, you won't be entered into the draw.
What?
Apparently, something to do with free will and gifts or something. So you can't, if you're entering into a draw, but you tick gift aid, it doesn't apply for some reason or something. So
And
don't
you
tick gift
you say
aid.
you haven't researched this?
I did it. I put up the page, and then someone messaged me afterwards and said, you might want to let people know, don't do gift aid. If you want to be entered into the draw. If you don't, do gift aid, and then more money goes to the foundation.
My agent donated £50, but said, can he not be entered into the draw?
Okay.
So he has no interest in football whatsoever.
Well, he's still working on the pod.
That's a fair point. He could host it.
Right, moving on. Let's talk about. We're podding at 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. About half an hour ago, Roy Hodgson was confirmed as the new Palace manager, replacing Frank de Boer, who was sacked on Monday morning.
Yeah, this doesn't go out till tomorrow morning, though, so anything could happen in between.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, then, Kevin, given that, in my opinion, we actually put in our best performance of the season at Turf Moor under Frank and lost 1-0, was it the right decision to sack Frank de Boer after 77 days and 4 league games?
How long does this pod last normally?
As long as we want it to.
The answer to that first question is going to be... Personally, I don't think it was the right decision. I don't think it was a surprising decision. Only time will tell how right the decision was. It was a good performance. As we said this before, it's not his fault that Zaha and Loftus-Cheek hasn't been available. It's not his fault that 6 of the 7 goals have been individual errors. It's not his fault that the squad's pretty threadbare. But having said that, even with a threadbare squad, his team selection was slightly mystifying on Sunday. Chung Yong Lee... Van Arnholt could have played left back and Schlupp could have played where Chung Yong Lee was. So it's not like we had no options. Just set the tone with a dreadful error. So I genuinely feel sorry for Frank de Boer. I mean, in the past when managers have gone, I would have learned to drive simply so I could drive the cab up and help them pack and go quickly. But
you can't drive?
No, we've had this before. I can't drive or swim. That doesn't matter. It's a different pod.
So you're doing bets about swimming naked through Thornton Heath Pond? Irrelevant. Because you can't swim.
Yeah, because there's no water in. There's no water in the pond. There hasn't been any water in Thornton Heath Pond for 35 years. I can wade through discarded Polish beer cans. It's not a problem, swimming or not swimming. But I do feel sorry for Frank. I feel sorry for Frank de Boer. Now, of course, all the rumours start. People are trying to shift the blame on. Frank de Boer's trying to hint that he wasn't responsible for the tactics that we were using. All sorts of rumours now coming out about unhappy players, Delaney, Ward, Kelly, stories about meetings that Friedman had with de Boer when he demanded changes. So what would be really nice if somebody at Palace just turned around and said, look, we made a mistake, we're going to move on. But no one's taking responsibility for what happened. It turns out, I still think that Steve Parish made a bold and ambitious decision to go for Frank de Boer, albeit the Independent reported yesterday that I'm sticking by albeit the Independent reported that bizarrely Steve Parish got bored halfway through the 5-week process and the Americans had to focus his attention. But I still think it was an ambitious move to get Frank de Boer. I think it just turned out to be too much of a culture shock for both clubs, both for him and for Palace, and it was a mistake. Let's move on. But the recriminations are good. What worries me is that the recriminations and the arguments are going to carry on long after Roy Hodgson is manager, and there needs to be some sort of clear the air process. There needs to be someone saying, look, this is what happened, this is why we took him on, this is what we said to him, this is what he said to us, this is what the players felt, now can we move on? Because until they do that, until they start communicating with us properly, we will all just be speculating and arguing with each other until they're not
Christmas. The club aren't gonna tell us exactly what happened. The club
I don't see why
about the thing, and with good reason, James, aren't they?
Well, it's a thing, as Kez just said, it's a thing we talk about most pods, and we spoke about it a lot on the last pod about the lack of communication. And it's been quite a whirlwind of sort of 48 hours, from going up to Burnley to today. The club are not going to tell us, of course they're not. But I guess you know what, my mind's all over the place about it.
Yeah.
I'm up about it. I'm down about it. I'm all over the place about the decision. I don't think they should have got rid of De Boer as quick as they did. But at the same time, it's just the way it is at the moment, and his position was almost untenable. And it's just like, I didn't know what he was going to do. What was he going to do?
But even simple things, communication-wise, why is Steve Parish is tweeting on Sunday night that we've all got to stick together, that we've got to stay behind him. He's telling TalkSport on Monday morning.
I don't think he was talking about De Boer. He was talking about us as a club sticking together. That's what I took that as.
Yeah, he never met. But
even so, Kev, it goes back to your initial point, which we talk about a lot. It's about the communication thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it's the same at other clubs. and as I said, I am all over the place about it. I'm not a massive fan of Hodgson, but I think he'll do a job. I just think, we're a bit of a laughing stock at the moment in football. But then again, things change so quickly. In about a week's time, it'll be another club that's going to be a laughing stock. And we've broken some unenviable records in the last couple of days, which I'm sure Statter in the corner will tell us about. But you know what? I just think it's all happened. Let's just get on with it. I know we're going to talk about it for the next 2 hours, but in reality,
I hope it's not 2 hours.
Well, neither do I.
But you say let's get on with it, but Andy, are the things that have happened in the last week or the last couple of weeks, are they not pointing towards bigger problems at Palace than just a manager that didn't fit?
Well, I think there was the point, as far as I'm concerned, is that it was entirely the correct decision to get rid of him, but it was entirely the incorrect decision to hire him in the first place. And it was the incorrect decision that there had been similar murmurings when he was at Inter about being naive defensively and about him being particularly dogmatic in how he dealt with the board and in him being an ideologue and him being a difficult character to deal with. These weren't new things. And they weren't new things in terms of how he was going to play football. People who delved enough into his history at Ajax had seen that team played pretty much the Van Gaal at United way. They were very, very patient in possession, but had technically able players. At that point, when he was at Ajax, he had Vertonghen, Alderweireld and Christian Eriksen in his team. I mean, those are three genuinely world-class players. He's not going to come to a team like Crystal Palace as an ideologue and playing with players like Tompkins, like Dan and like Joel Ward and be able to have any modicum of success whatsoever. So people are feeling embarrassed because it's happened so quickly, but it was inevitable. It was wholly inevitable.
Do you really think at the beginning of the season, Andy, that we'd be sat here after 4 games and he'd be gone?
He
said
did,
it last
though,
week.
to be fair, he did.
Said it, he did say it 2 weeks
Okay,
ago.
you did then. I'll get my coat. Shall I get my coat? I can't remember last week.
Ask me that question. I'll say the answer is no. Of course I didn't.
Of course I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the interesting thing is I think there was lots of excitement when he was recruited as the manager because he's a big name. Yeah. He was a big name as a player. We all recognised him having won the Champions League in 1995, having played for Barcelona under Louis van Gaal, having been the guy at the 1998 World Cup who delivered the ball to Bergkamp for that amazing goal. We all knew him and we were excited on the basis of what he'd done in his playing career and thought that would translate across into how he managed Crystal Palace. If we're completely honest about it, we're excited because it was Frank de Boer. We weren't excited because it was someone who had demonstrable track record at a club at a similar level to Palace or with similar resource constraints as Palace, that he would then translate it across the Palace. We were excited because it was Frank de Boer. And in the same way, I if you were going to draw any inferences from how you would expect the club to have dealt with it, they were probably excited by it as well. If Frank de Boer comes into an interview with you and talks to you about his so-called philosophy of playing football and his ideology of how teams should play football and him having played that ball to Dennis Bergkamp and him having won the Champions League and him having played for Barcelona, I would be impressed.
Well, he also did a PowerPoint presentation, apparently.
Of the past of Bergkamp.
No, but the thing is, apparently, it turns. I don't think either side did their due diligence. It's clear he didn't know as much about the club as he said he did when he had these meetings. But I do think it's unfair to say we're basing his reputation on him as a player. He had a world-class reputation as a coach. There's no point denying that. The reason Inter took him on in the first place is that his reputation as a coach and as somebody who developed young players was fantastic. There was no. He wasn't
but
taken
in a
on.
league that's not.
But that's neither here nor there. He had a world-class reputation as a coach. Simple as that. So his reputation wasn't based on what he did as a player. And yes, there is an element of excitement. There's an element of excitement about the fact that Allardyce was ex-England manager. You can say that about Hodgson. People, as we said last week, people who don't know about football would look at Palace and go, "Wow, they've got 2 ex-England managers. They must be a big, successful club." But there's no point denying that De Boer had a reputation, and that we went after. And at the time, Watford, Southampton, Arsenal. I was delighted that we got De Boer. I'd rather have De Boer than Silva and Pellegrini, and that's as far as I'm concerned. At the time, I was right, and with hindsight, I might still have been right, but we'll never know. But I still don't think he's been given enough time, and I still think it's what's unfortunate for him and his reputation, not his wallet, because it turns out, we find out tonight, he's earned more for football than Neymar has this season. So with his £4 million payoff and Roy's whatever he's getting and his £2 million bonus for keeping us up, how many times have we paid £2 million to people to keep us up? Or not in legal reason, for legal reasons, but it's not. I was pleased. I thought he was the right choice, and then it turns out apparently it's not. But I just want to know, from the point of view of his reputation, why suddenly all these stories are swirling about that we didn't know. We had one rumour 2 weeks ago that a player had spoken to the Telegraph, and now we're talking about. We hear that Joel Ward, the Sun, are saying today, Neil Ashton, who's a Palace fan, saying Joel Ward is humiliated by.
It's always somebody else's fault, though, Kev, isn't it?
I know, but Joel Ward is humiliated by being picked for the first team every week, so that's clearly not true. But James, that's my point.
No.
That's my point. It's always somebody else's fault.
It's always somebody else's fault.
My point is, why can't somebody at the club just turn around and say, look, honest mistakes were made. We overstretched ourselves in bringing this manager in. We didn't think it through. Why can't Parish say, I didn't particularly want him, but the Americans want him? Everyone's saying now this morning.
In life in general, if somebody makes a mistake, if they hold their hand up and admit it, then we all get on with it.
Of course we
if
do.
you start not admitting it, and that's what's happened here.
Exactly.
And this is why there's something wrong at the club.
Sky are reporting tonight that the Americans made the decision to say get rid of him. So why can't he say that? Why can't he say, look, this didn't work. I've spoken to the Americans. We've decided to make it. It's a difficult decision, but it's the right decision to make. It's a tough decision. We're making it now. We all have to do that in business. And we'd go, okay, fair enough. But because they don't do that, it just festers. It just goes on and on. So then suddenly people who used to love Delaney are going, I can't stand Delaney now, based on a rumour that he's upset by something that was said. And so why not tell us whether there was a meeting with him?
There has to be some sort of cloak and dagger about it. You can't have clubs telling us everything.
Why not? But at the moment they're telling us nothing.
There must be a reason that
I'm
clubs
sure
want
there
to
are
keep stuff
confidential.
behind closed doors. Yeah,
I'm sure Frank de Boer signed something that says he doesn't tell his side of the story because he's getting a lot of money. But he's got a side of the story. All we hear now, we hear rumours that Frank de Boer would do what Glenn Hoddle did in training, would get the ball down and take the mickey out.
Well, the Palace social media account were tweeting videos of that happening.
Well, but fine. Well, let's hear what he had to say. Let's allow him to say, look, this wasn't the right club for me at the time.
Well, are we maybe all overanalyzing it? And was it simply a case of just square peg in a round hole? It was the wrong guy.
Yes,
it
was. I think it's as simple as that.
But in which case,
why it's as simple as that?
Nothing more sinister than that. It was just.
But why did we take 5 weeks to recruit him? And why did no one work that out in the first place?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
where the problem.
Because we keep talking about, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody. Because I keep saying, the club's done this, the club has to do that, the club's responsible, transfer. Because I don't want to say out loud Steve Parish, because it's not entirely Steve Parish's fault. But so many people on social media say it's, of course, some of the responsibility lays at Steve Parish. It's not Frank de Boer's fault that our squad is threadbare at the moment. I don't know how we.
But it is Frank de Boer's fault that he decided to play a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Well, it is. I know, but it's also
three-man defence on the opening game of a Premier League season.
But when you get Steve Parish tweeting as he did on Sunday night, everybody's tweeting Steve Parish about bringing players in, and then Steve Parish tweets. And this is a matter of record, Andy, so your legal ears can stop quivering. Steve Parish tweets that it's to Palace fans, 90% of you wanted Sacco. That's why we didn't have money for other players. So that's no.
What, he tweeted that?
Yeah. 90% of you wanted Sacco. Not the manager wanted Sacco, not I wanted Sacco.
Where did he put the 90% from?
90% of you wanted Sacco.
The thing is
so where's the leadership? So what I'm saying is that mistakes have to be laid at people's door, and some of the mistakes are at Steve Parish's door. So why can't Steve Parish admit that? Our recruitment hasn't been brilliant in the last 2 years because as I say, we keep pulling off this trick, and it's a really clever thing to do. Is that each season our first team is stronger. There's no doubt about that. First 12 or 13 is stronger, but somehow the squad's weaker. How do they manage to do that? Because that takes some doing. We've got, if Zaha, Loftus-Cheek, Sacco are playing, that's a good first 11, 12 players. Yeah. But then after that,
because the squad gets older and because the players are on contracts that Championship clubs can't afford,
but none of
they get older.
But none of that's the Boer's fault, is it?
No, I'm not saying that is the. Anyway,
but it is. But he's getting. But the club are blaming him for everything.
Can I pick you up on one thing? Firstly, Steve Parish. Steve Parish did say at the start of the season. In fact, the day that De Boer was announced, he said, "If De Boer fails, I fail."
Yeah.
So that he has to. I'm sure he will acknowledge now that is partly his fault because it has failed. And also, you're talking about Steve going on Twitter and talking to the fans on Sunday night, which he did. Maybe some of those tweets were, ill-judged. That let's stick together.
But at least he did them. Yeah, but, fair enough.
You're also saying that there isn't enough communication. So he is communicating in a way with fans, but that has then come back to bite him. It's a different
sort of communication.
It's very difficult.
It's a different sort of communication. I think the communication we're talking about is actual facts. It's facts. That's the communication. What you don't want is emotion coming from the people running.
Football is emotional.
It is emotional. Yes, it is emotional. We're emotional as fans, and the players are emotional. We're emotional. We're an emotional race. And we are emotional. But when we talk, but for what I get, for the communication side of it, it's communication. You can't have that level of emotion in your communication.
But Steve is a fan as well.
Well, maybe therein lies the problem. Maybe therein lies the ultimate problem: is that you cannot have a fan who running a football club. Now, maybe that's the problem. I don't know. Maybe that's another debate. If you had a businessman running a football club, running it as a business, we wouldn't be in this situation.
He is a businessman. He sold a business for 140
But he's
million
also a
pounds.
fan.
Yeah.
But he's also a fan, and I'll never take that away from him. He's a great fan of the club, and I'm not dissing what he's done. But maybe therein lies the problem.